You can already see the visible parts of Ripple's strategy: custody platforms, a regulated stable dollar, prime brokerage, and treasury systems. But there is a quieter piece that almost nobody talks about: the wallet fabric that stitches those components into something an institution can actually use at scale. Palisade was not acquired for a logo or a consumer app. It was acquired because its infrastructure-level wallets can sit between vaults, payment rails, and tokenized assets, enforcing policy every time value moves. If Ripple succeeds, this fabric may end up routing flows between banks, corporates, and sovereign money in the background, while most of the world still thinks a wallet is just an icon on a screen. When most people imagine a crypto wallet, they picture a browser extension or a mobile app. Click send, paste an address, sign a transaction. It feels personal and tactical, like a digital version of a leather wallet. The contrast is that institutions do not think in terms of individual wallets at all. They think in terms of policies, permissions, and obligations that must be enforced across thousands of accounts and billions in assets, often spanning multiple custodians, jurisdictions, and regulatory regimes. Some of what we're about to explore lives deep inside those institutional systems, and it can feel abstract at first. That's okay. We'll ground it in a real operational flow before we're done. That gap between the consumer image of a wallet and the institutional reality is where the concept of a wallet fabric lives. Instead of one app holding one set of keys, think of an invisible grid of policy-driven wallets connecting custodians, payment processors, prime brokers, and treasury systems. In that grid, a wallet is not a single product. It's a programmable endpoint that can be created, governed, and retired automatically as value moves across the system. Ripple's acquisition of Palisade points directly at this shift. Palisade does not compete with the wallets retail users see. It builds the machinery underneath: multi-party computation for keys, zero trust controls around every action, and wallet-as-a-service APIs that allow institutions to spin up secure accounts as easily as they open subledgers today. In this episode, we unpack what that fabric actually is, where Palisade fits inside Ripple's broader stack, and why it's one of the most important and least visible layers in modern institutional settlement. Everything here is for educational and entertainment purposes only, not financial advice. Always do your own research before making any investment decisions. If clear, no hype crypto education helps you make sense of all this. Hit like and subscribe. It tells YouTube this series is worth showing to other newcomers, and it helps me keep building it for you. If the phrase wallet fabric sounds abstract, imagine the internet's backbone or a railway junction. End users see websites or train carriages. Operators see routing tables and track switches that decide how traffic moves. The wallet fabric plays that routing role for digital assets. It decides how and under what conditions value is allowed to leave a vault, cross a rail, and land in a new account. At the technical level, Palisade's model starts with multi-party computation, or MPC. Instead of one machine holding a private key, pieces of the key are distributed across multiple secure environments. A transaction is only authorized when those pieces collaborate to produce a valid signature, without ever reconstructing the full key in one place. For an institution, that means a rogue employee, a compromised server, or a single breached data center cannot unilaterally drain funds. The signing process itself becomes policy-aware infrastructure. Around that, Palisade wraps a zero-trust architecture. Every request is treated as untrusted by default, even if it originates from inside the network. Policies define who can approve which actions, at what limits, from which systems, with what additional checks. That is a very different mindset from the classic trusted perimeter model many legacy systems still rely on. In a wallet fabric, trust is not assumed because you are on a particular VPN. It is rebuilt, transaction by transaction, based on explicit rules. Most importantly, Palisade exposes this machinery as a service. Instead of hard-coding wallets deep inside one product, bank, or platform, It lets developers and operations teams treat wallets as programmable building blocks. Spin up a wallet to collect subscription payments in a new region. Spin up another to manage collateral for a trading desk. Decommission them when they are no longer needed, with audit trails intact. The fabric is not a single app. It is a grid of secure, policy-driven endpoints that other systems can rely on. To understand what Palisade actually does for Ripple, it helps to trace the path of a single transaction. Start where most digital assets live, in an institutional stack, deep inside qualified custody. Keys are anchored in hardware security modules, governance rules are encoded in policy engines, and regulators care that nothing escapes that perimeter without proper authorization. Palisade's wallet fabric sits just above that vault layer. When Ripple Custody or a partner like Standard Custody needs to move assets, they do not simply export keys or rely on ad hoc signing servers. They call Palisade's MPC layer, which orchestrates the signing process under strict controls. Policy engines check the asset type, the destination, the amount, the risk rules, and even the time of day before the MPC nodes agree to sign. The effect is that custody can project controlled spending power outward without diluting its security posture. On the network edge, Palisade connects to payment and trading systems. Ripple Payments needs to send funds along a corridor. Ripple Prime needs to collateralize a position or settle a trade. GTreasury needs to rebalance cash and digital assets across operating accounts. In each case, the business system does not manage raw keys. It requests actions from the wallet fabric. Palisade decides which wallets to use, which key shards to engage, and which policies must be satisfied before the transaction leaves custody and hits the rails. Because the architecture is API-driven, Ripple can also create specialized wallet templates, high-frequency payout wallets with strict limits and automated top-ups, collection wallets for merchants that aggregate balances into a primary treasury account, wallets dedicated to handling Ripple's stable dollar in specific jurisdictions, with compliance flags baked in. The institution never has to see that complexity. They see predictable endpoints. Underneath, the fabric applies the correct controls for each use case. Once you zoom out, Palisade's role inside Ripple's broader stack becomes clearer. Ripple Custody, powered by platforms like Metaco and Standard Custody, anchors the assets. Ripple's stable dollar, tokenized treasuries, and other instruments sit there under regulated control. Ripple Payments exposes bank-grade payment APIs to institutions. Ripple Prime acts as the trading and liquidity hub. GTreasury brings corporate cash management and forecasting into the picture. Rail extends Ripple's stablecoin rails into merchant and payout environments. Without a unifying wallet fabric, each of those components would need its own wallet system, its own policy engine, and its own integration to custody. That is how many early crypto stacks were built, fragmented and brittle. By inserting Palisade as a shared layer, Ripple can harmonize wallet behavior across the entire stack. Custody projects assets into Palisade. Palisade enforces policy and exposes wallets to payments, Prime, Treasury, and Rail through consistent interfaces. For example, when Ripple Payments sends a cross-border payout using Ripple's stable dollar, the funds may originate in a custody vault, pass through a corridor managed by Ripple Prime, and land in a merchant wallet provisioned through Rail. Palisade can orchestrate each step: which pool the funds come from, which wallets are allowed to receive them, what limits and compliance checks apply, and how the final balances are reflected back into GTreasury's dashboards. That same logic can be applied to central bank digital currency pilots and tokenized deposits. A central bank using Ripple's CBDC platform still needs a way to manage thousands or millions of secure wallets for intermediaries and end users. Commercial banks, testing tokenized deposits on the XRP ledger, need policy-aware custody and payout accounts. Palisade gives Ripple a standard way to manage those wallets, regardless of whether the underlying asset is Ripple's stable dollar, a CBDC token, or a tokenized Treasury instrument. The first place this fabric shows its value is in cross-border flows. A payment service provider connecting to Ripple payments might serve hundreds of smaller institutions and fintechs. Each of those clients needs segregated wallets, clear limits, and predictable settlement behavior. With Palisade, Ripple can provision dedicated payout wallets per client, per corridor, or even per use case, while still maintaining centralized control over risk and compliance at the custody layer. On the corporate side, GTreasury's integration creates another path. A multinational treasury team may want to hold part of its working capital in Ripple's stable dollar to take advantage of faster settlement and automated sweeps. Palisade can maintain distinct wallets for operating accounts, reserve accounts, and escrow-style arrangements, all mapped back into GTreasury's views. When funds need to move, the wallet fabric ensures the correct policies are enforced without the Treasury team ever manually handling keys. In trading and liquidity, Ripple Prime's desks can use Palisade-managed wallets for collateral, margin, and settlement across venues. The same MPC and zero trust controls that protect custody can now govern how much exposure a particular desk, strategy, or counterparty is allowed to take. That reduces the operational risk that has plagued many centralized exchanges and unstructured trading setups. Instead of improvising key management for each new venue, the Prime brokerage leans on a shared wallet infrastructure. Looking forward, this fabric is also what enables more advanced Web3-style use cases without sacrificing institutional discipline. DeFi protocols, tokenized RWAs, and metaverse platforms may live on different chains, including the XRP ledger and EVM networks. Palisade does not need to become a chain itself. It simply manages the keys and wallets that interface with those environments. That means institutions can experiment with new ecosystems while keeping signing, policies, and audit trails under a consistent umbrella. For all of that importance, you do not see Palisade logos on consumer apps or retail marketing. That is by design. Foundational infrastructure like this operates behind the scenes, embedded inside products that carry other brands. A bank's client will see its own portal. A fintech's user will see a branded card or app. The wallet fabric coordinating those flows will rarely be mentioned by name. There's also a strategic reason Ripple keeps this layer relatively quiet. Negotiations around custody, prime services, and CBDC platforms involve regulators, central banks, and systemically important institutions. Those conversations are about risk, compliance, and operational resilience, not about a catchy consumer narrative. The wallet infrastructure is evaluated by security teams, auditors, and risk committees. Once they are satisfied, the deployment simply becomes part of the institution's internal architecture. Finally, building this kind of system takes years. MPC implementations must be battle-tested. Zero trust designs require careful integration with identity systems, logging frameworks, and incident response processes. Each new jurisdiction or asset type brings its own regulatory expectations. Broadcasting every iteration to the public would add noise without creating much additional trust. Instead, Ripple and Palisade can let their work show up indirectly through successful pilots, expanding corridors, and the absence of high-profile failures. If you project this architecture forward a few years, the wallet fabric becomes one of the key control points in a broader financial mesh. On the ledger side, the XRP ledger is evolving with decentralized identity, verifiable credentials, regulated issuer templates, and audit-friendly memo standards. Those features allow assets and payments on the ledger to carry just enough identity and compliance information to satisfy regulators without turning every transaction into public personal data. On the institutional side, regulators are shaping frameworks for stablecoins, CBDCs, and tokenized deposits. Ripple is positioning its stack so that Ripple's stable dollar, CBDC platforms, liquidity services, and custody solutions can all operate under those rules. Palisade's wallet layer is where those two worlds intersect. It is the control point that can enforce which wallets are allowed to touch which asset types, under which regulatory regimes, with what reporting obligations. As more real-world assets and payment flows move on and around the XRP ledger, the number of wallets an institution needs to manage will explode. Human processes will not scale. Policy-driven programmable wallet fabrics will. That is the bet Ripple is making with Palisade. Not that wallets become famous brands, but that they become reliable, invisible infrastructure that allows institutions to treat digital assets and tokenized money as just another part of their operating toolkit. We started with a simple image. Most people think of a wallet as an app. Underneath Ripple's institutional stack, the meaning of that word is changing. A wallet is becoming a programmable endpoint in a larger fabric, where MPC, zero trust, and custody-grade controls decide when value is allowed to move. Palisade is the infrastructure that turns that concept into something deployable across custody, payments, trading, and treasury. If this architecture holds, future headlines about CBDC launches, tokenized treasuries, new corridors, or even retail payouts will sit on top of the same invisible layer. Institutions will see predictable behavior and strong guarantees. End users will see money arriving faster and more reliably. And somewhere in between, policy engines inside a wallet fabric will be making thousands of decisions per second about how those flows are allowed to cross. Understanding that fabric does not provide a quick price takeaway. What it does offer is a clearer map of where control, risk, and strategic advantage may sit in a tokenized financial system. If Ripple's approach works, Palisade's wallets will be one of the quiet places where that advantage is expressed. To make all of this concrete, imagine a large multinational company at the end of a normal business day. Across dozens of countries, payments have been collected, invoices issued, currencies exchanged, and obligations recorded. None of that money has moved yet. What exists instead is a web of instructions. Who owes what, in which currency, under which rules. Inside the company's treasury system, those instructions are evaluated. Liquidity is checked. Compliance rules are applied. Timing is optimized. Decisions are made about when settlement should happen and how much risk the firm is willing to take. Only after those decisions are finalized does money actually move. That movement touches the most restricted part of the system: regulated custody, central bank money, final settlement. This is where errors are unacceptable and reversals are rare. Ripple's role sits between those two moments. It doesn't decide business outcomes, and it doesn't replace settlement. It coordinates the handoff. It allows institutions to automate the path from intent to finality, while keeping control, compliance, and permissions intact the entire way. Palisade fits into this flow as the control fabric. It governs access. It enforces policy. It ensures that only approved actions from approved entities under approved conditions are ever allowed to touch settlement money. Not once. Every time. Seen this way, wallets are no longer apps. They're not things people log into. They're infrastructure components that appear when needed, act under strict rules, and disappear when their job is done. This is why the system looks invisible from the outside. Nothing here is designed to feel exciting. It's designed to feel boring, reliable, and safe to institutions that move real money every day. And once you understand that flow, decisions first, settlement last, the entire architecture stops feeling abstract. It becomes operational. That's the layer Ripple is building. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next deep dive. This channel is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and is not financial advice. Always do your own research and keep the discussion respectful. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, subscribing, leaving a comment, or sharing it with a friend.